You're listening to the Spark Radio Network, Internet radio like you've never heard before. Innovation, creativity, and imagination are all said to begin with a spark. So fasten your seatbelt and take the ride of your life and listen for the spark.
You are listening to KLRN Radio, where liberty and reason still reign.
Hey, this is John Preston, Marine combat veteran and Pacific Records recording artist. Just reaching out to have you check out our new album, Battle Cry, Songs of America's Heroes, an album featuring phenomenal other combat veteran artists like Scott Brown of the Scooter Brown Band, Ryan Weaver, Rowdy Johnson, just an incredible mix of people. This is all veterans telling our stories and our lives, and we're giving 100% of our proceeds to the Valkyrie Initiative to help veterans and first responders integrate back into society. I myself have battled with post-traumatic stress for many years and lost my own brother, a Marine Corps veteran, to suicide. I ask that you step with us and make this happen. We are in pre-order right now and release on March 17th. Go to iTunes, go to Amazon, buy. We plan on making the charts and making it at a very high level, and your support right now makes a difference. This is the release of my new song, Superman Falls, which is actually about the loss of my own brother, which happened last year, and I would love for everyone to check it out, to listen, and hopefully it'll make a difference in many lives.
If you're 85 or younger, would you like peace of mind and comfort for your family? We're Final Expense Direct with an urgent message for you. The average funeral today costs over $8,000, but the most you'll get from government benefits is $255. How will your family pay the difference? We can help. Our senior plans start as low as just $1 a day and pay up to $30,000 for a funeral and other final expenses. Peace of mind is easy. There's no medical exam. You'll have lifetime coverage, and your plan can't be canceled as long as you pay your premiums. Call now for free information about our senior plans. Answer a few simple questions and receive approval right on the phone. Plus, call right now and we'll give you a discount prescription card for free. Call 800-553-8687. That's 800-553-8687. Again, 800-553-8687.
And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
Freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. We didn't pass it on to our children in the bloodstream. The only way they can inherit the freedom we have known is if we fight for it, protect it, defend it, and then hand it to them with the well-taught lessons of how they in their lifetime must do the same.
All right, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is the JandR Show. We're coming to you live right now from KLRNradio.com, where we're live every Tuesday and Thursday at 10 p.m. Eastern, and also rebroadcast on networks such as the Lanterns Radio Network and a few others around the web. Now, this evening, I am joined by my usual co-host, Miss Jen. Good evening, ma'am. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I am doing all right now that we've finished fighting off the gremlins for the evening. And we do have with us this evening a guest, which we don't do that often on Jen and Rick, but he opted to do the earlier time slot, which is fine because I actually enjoy spreading the guests around a little bit. We have Michael Abbott Jr., the author of Entitled to Slavery. We're going to bring him on with us right now. And why don't you go ahead and take a moment to introduce yourself, sir, and then we'll get started.
Oh, Rick, thank you for having me on the program. I just wanted to extend my gratitude to speaking to your audience, and I'm really excited about just informing them about the book and what it has to offer to the thought marketplace, and just answering any questions you guys may have.
It's an honor to have you. I have to admit, I have actually read through the book once. Now I'm actually reading through it again because it's just one of those books where I kind of read through it in a hurry because I got it within about a week of the interview being confirmed. So I read through it as quickly as I could. Now I'm going back through it again to get more out of it. And I have to say, it's a very intriguing book. I've enjoyed it. I'm enjoying the second read even more because now I feel like I can slow down and kind of soak it in a bit more. Now I have to admit, you opened, and I don't want to give much of it away because we want folks to buy the books, but you opened in a very intriguing way. You basically threw the humanist movement under the bus, which I kind of liked, I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, what I really want readers to understand is that we are torn in a struggle between a biblical worldview and a humanist worldview, and that's the only direction the pendulum swings. If you are not submitting your need before the Almighty Creator, then you are submitting your need before man. And that's just the only way the pendulum swings, like I said. But I want to talk a bit about what the reason for the name of the book is. It's a pretty provocative title, obviously, entitled To Slavery. And, Rick, what if I were to tell you that when progressives say that we're moving forward as a culture, or we are evolving, or we are progressing, what if I were to tell you that they're right? I think your audience would say, who is this that you brought on the phone? This is not at all what I thought you were going to talk about. But what I want to tell you and Jen is that history shows that every advanced civilization progresses through the following 9 stages. They all start at the point of bondage. So from bondage or slavery, it goes as follows. From slavery to great spiritual faith to courage, courage to liberty, liberty to abundance, abundance to selfishness, selfishness to complacency, complacency to apathy, apathy to dependence, and tragically, dependence back into slavery. So it's a circular rotation. So you hear these claims that we're progressing, we're moving forward. Well, if you put the lens of history on and you look at this claim through the rightful lens, you'll see that they're right. And that's what I'm trying to warn people about and say, hey, we have some things we can do to stop or ebb the flow, so to speak. But we need to wake up to this.
No, I actually agree with your premise, because I know that was one of the things that you had laid out in the book was that, when progressives say we're moving forward, we're right. But the issue is they think we're moving forward to a utopia, and we're actually kind of moving forward back to where we started from.
Yeah, they certainly do. And again, there are what I would call 4 irreconcilable differences between the core beliefs of a progressive or a humanist and what the teachings of the gospel were to say. And again, I realize that not everyone in the audience is Christian, but by and large, I just want people to open their mind and accept some of these ideas that I have to share. And the first is, progressives and humanists truly believe that we can perfect human nature if everyone would ascribe and commit to this form of social justice. And I'm here to tell you that violates the concept of original sin. I mean, we cannot create heaven on earth, and that would be tenet number 2, this belief that, if we just redirect our emphasis onto the state and everything for the state, nothing but the state, that we can create heaven on earth in this utopian society like you mentioned. And that's just not possible. And real quickly, third, humanists possess what I would call a rigid faith in their ability to control the outside environment. I mean, you hear the former president saying that we have the power to control the sea levels, and that, to me, that's a tough claim. I'm not saying that there's not actions that we're doing that we could perhaps be doing more responsibly, but to say that we have a bigger footprint and impact on the earth than the sun, which is 330,000 times the mass and density of Earth, I just think that's a bit laughable. And then finally, humanists use people as a means to an end. And I'm sure you covered this in an earlier show last year, but all during the Republican rallies for President Trump, at that time it was candidate Trump, the discussion was, well, look how violent these rallies are. And a Project Veritas video came out and showed that there were plants, working through the AFL-CIO that incited that violence, and then that got carried over by the media, and then they tried to launch a narrative that, hey, these are just violent people. And Christians and people with a biblical worldview don't use people as a means to an end, and I just think it's interesting when you have a humanist or a progressive that says they claim that we care for those who are less fortunate and underprivileged. Those are the same people that they're using. So again, those are the ideas that what I want to do is arm people with defenses when they're challenged on their claims, and that's, you've probably read now that that's the entire thesis of Chapter 2.
Oh yeah, and you've done a really good job of outlining some things that folks can use. Now, I just want to backtrack for just a second, because now I know you touched on this earlier, but just in case we have some folks that are tuning in, because you'd mentioned it yourself, it's a pretty provocative title. What made you decide to use that particular title?
Excuse me. I think that we live in an entitlement culture, and I think you see that on the Little League baseball field. I think you see that in the public school system, and now we're starting to see that with increasing frequency in the workplace. And people who have been on for 6 months on the job, all of a sudden, hey, I've mastered everything there is to know. I'm ready for the next level, and that's just not how life works. So again, what I want to get back to is we're no different than any other society. I mean, what makes America different than the Roman Empire or the ancient Chinese times or medieval empires? What makes us different? What makes us unique? Can we step outside of the grand scale of the human experience as if we are so enlightened that nothing can possibly happen to us? My answer to that question is no, and what I'm trying to argue is, guys, if we look at this through the right prism, this is the trajectory that we're currently on, and I would argue that we're somewhere in between that apathy and dependence stage right now, and once you reach dependence, the next stage is slavery.
Yeah, it's funny because when I read the synopsis of the book, I kind of thought the same thing. I was like, man, we are full on into apathy and headed towards dependence. And the sad thing is we're doing it willingly to ourselves. That's the scariest part about it. It's not, nobody's making us do this. We are choosing it. That's the part that I can't grasp that part, to be honest, because I can understand somebody bigger, stronger than you coming in and forcibly removing your freedoms. But to continue to give them up to the point where you want a government that's going to take care of your health care, eventually we've already got people that are starting to talk about universal basic income because of all the automation and everything else, which basically means the government's going to be basically giving you money to live on, which means eventually they're going to be taking care of your housing, your car, everything else. To be willingly moving towards this point, I can't comprehend that, but it seems like so many and sorry, Jen, but so many of the millennial generation seem like they actually are craving the government just to step in and take care of them.
Yeah.
Don't worry, you don't ever have to apologize to me about that.
Well, no, I just know you don't like being called a millennial because you're on the cusp.
I'm right on the cusp, but it's okay. I agree.
Well, we can call you a Gen Xer.
There we go.
What I would say to that point, Rick, is that you have people that are by and large ascribing to what are emotional appeals. I mean, these are not facts and data that are grounded in empirical science. These are what are sold as altruistic, noble, and virtuous cultural progressions. And for example, let me just talk about one of the more prominent fixtures on the political landscape. The minimum wage has been on the ballot, state ballots nationwide 20 times in the last 20 years, and they've increased the minimum wage. They've passed 18 of those times. Well, university studies, in particular, there's a University of Georgia study that shows for every 10% increase to the minimum wage, youth unemployment in the 16 to 25-year-old demographic increases 4.6% at minimum. And we saw this in 2008 when the minimum wage was raised 12%, youth unemployment spiked 5%. So now there's this narrative. You talked about universal basic income. Well, the big narrative now, and actually this is all in the news this week during the Seattle minimum wage taking it up to $15. The Fight for 15 crowd wants to raise the minimum wage by 105%. Now, both recent experience and empirical studies proven and tested that would show that would bring about a 50% spike in youth unemployment. And you're already seeing that with, you go to Wendy's, you go to McDonald's, you've got these fast food kiosks that are taking lower skill, lower wage employment. But when you take young people out of the workforce, what you're doing is you are reducing productivity, you're reducing responsibility, and you're driving people into this dependent state. So again, it's people, how does this happen? I just don't understand. How are we going there? Well, it's this idea that our emotions can drive us, and then it leads us right into our own destruction.
You know, it's interesting that you bring up the Seattle $15 wage hike because there's been a recent study released on that. And the funny thing is that the very people that this particular increase was supposed to help, now that they've had time to look at the cumulative data, not only are you right about the spike in youth unemployment, but at the same time, the very people this was meant to help have actually lost $125 per month per capita income because of the rate increases for everything when minimum wage went up, which we've been telling everybody was going to happen the entire time, but nobody wanted to listen to us. And now they're all going, but I thought I was supposed to be making more money. Now I actually have less.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And I read the exact same story that you're referencing. And the way that they phrase it, obviously, is what employers have done in that case is they've cut employee hours. So it's, yeah, you're making more money per hour, but you're working less hours. And the math over a 2-week time frame, like you mentioned, that's $125. That's a lot of money to someone that's in a low-skill job.
You know, and not to keep bashing the minimum wage topic, but since we're there, I have to admit, I'm not a fan of a government-mandated minimum wage at all, and let me explain, because I'm going to get hate mail about this, I always do. The reason I'm not a fan of government-mandated minimum wage jobs is because that basically tells the employer what the minimum is that they can pay you and still legally keep you employed. They stop really paying you for the job that you're doing, and they pay you based on what they can get away with. Now, I understand there needs to be some sort of a safety net in place because we do have some unscrupulous people out there, but at the same time, the federal minimum mandate just doesn't ever seem to work for me. And I guess the craziest thing, because most people don't realize this, just because the federal minimum wage says it has to be at least $7.50 an hour doesn't mean that is the minimum wage everywhere. I have a son who recently moved to Arizona for a few months, and he got a job out working fast food out there while he was going to be in town there for a few months, while he was working some other stuff. And he was making $10.50 an hour flipping burgers while he was making $20 an hour at his day job. He just wanted some extra cash. And he's like, I had no idea minimum wage was this high out here. I said, yeah, but look at the cost of living.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. That's a really good point. The other thing I would add to your comments, which I agree with, is the minimum wage is an assault on human liberties. So it says, if I wanted to work for you, and I'm willing to work for you at $6.50 an hour or $7 an hour, because let's face it, $7 an hour times 80 hours a week, hey, I need $560. Like, I need that. And some arbitrary third party comes in and says, no, you can't do this. So what they're coming in and doing is saying, I'm sorry, Rick and Mike, you can't get into this contractual agreement because Rick would be taking advantage of you. Taking advantage of me, I need $500. I need this to pay my rent. So, and the other thing I'll add is this book took me about 15 months to write. Where was my hourly rate for that? I mean, I would say I probably invested 1,500 hours writing this book. You know, and you've seen the back of it. There's 300 footnotes in there. I did a lot of work to put this together. So who's going to pay me $15 an hour times, 1,500 hours or whatever that amount would be? That's just not the way the world works.
Well, no, it's not. And, it's interesting that you bring that up because now it's got me thinking about all the man hours I've put into this stuff and just now finally getting to the point where I'm starting to see a bit of a return on it. Is there anybody that I can sue to go back and get $15 an hour for the last 9 years worth of work?
Well, how about there's even another layer to it? Who can I sue for, maybe 6 to 8 years that I spent waiting tables and bartending where the minimum wage doesn't apply in most places? Yeah,
exactly. I mean, and for years that was $2.13, Jen.
It still is in most places. And in fact, I still work in the event and bar and restaurant industry, and it still is usually $2.13 still. So there are a few places, a few states that have risen it, but also kind of to their detriment, like all these other things we've talked about, and the cost of living and the taxes in other ways are just so through the roof as well. It's not just the minimum wage on something like service. And I know people. I've worked in California, and I was paid more to cocktail waitress, and I also know that a lot of my coworkers didn't feel like they had to do diddly because they were making essentially more than most people were making minimum wage to do a hard labor job in most states, and then still expecting a 15 to 20% tip. So it's
that money's just not there to go around. I mean, what you're explaining is, it drives up prices, and if prices are spiking at the same time that you've essentially opened up the floodgates on the southern border, and again, whatever you think about, whether it's our human if it's our obligation to welcome everyone across the shores, the reality from an economic perspective is you're flooding the market with low-skill employees, which is going to place downward pressure on wages. At the same time, you're artificially increasing wages. That's not a good recipe. That drives up unemployment. It drives up prices, and that's economic science.
You are exactly right. I don't really have anything that I can add to that because that's the truth. Now, it's and here's the thing. Now, whether you're pro-immigration, anti-immigration, whatever you want to call it, the issue that a lot of us have, because this can also lead to this that ties everything back to the book and stuff that you've been writing, the collapse of a civilization. completely open border and just allowing anybody to come across is a recipe for disaster. Now, I don't mind legal immigration so much, because there need to be checks and balances in place, even for that. Because let's look at it from a logical perspective. If we go back into our own history, what happened when? I say we because I look like a white man, but I actually am a bit of a Heinz 57. But I did have some European ancestry. So let's say what happened when my European ancestors came over here and basically set foot on the continent, and suddenly there was a people that were already here, and next thing you know, a couple hundred years later, they've been marched off and they're in little camps now. That's part of the reason, and this is the thing that I always try to make liberals understand. That's part of the reason why we put the laws in place that we have when it comes to immigration, is because we don't want to repeat the same mistakes of our past, and we definitely don't want the same mistakes of our past repeated on us. But they don't want to look at it that way. But at the same time, I think, honestly, for liberals, most of it is they have a guilt complex, because if you look back in history, Franklin Delano Roosevelt was one of the worst people when it came to how he treated the Japanese indigenous people that were already here during World War II. Also, the fact that he would basically toss anybody that was trying to immigrate with tuberculosis into an insane asylum until they either got better or died. He didn't really care whichever one happened. And I think that's part of the problem with them, is they are trying to find ways to make up for things that have happened within their own party, and they're willing to throw the country's doors open while they're at it, but they still lock their own doors at night, and they lock their cars while they're driving down the highway, which makes absolutely no sense.
That and they build fences around all their premises, right? So, but your ancestors and mine understood that there's no such thing as a basic human right that doesn't come with a responsibility. And we now, again, not to keep coming back to this word entitled, but we have this idea now that's frankly being fanned by academia that, listen, you're entitled to everything, and that's the narrative today. Healthcare is a basic human right. Really? I mean, let's go back 1,000 years, before the advancement of all this medicine. It's just funny how these rights evolve, and then all of a sudden it's like the bar gets lifted. And it's a very dangerous precedent. But what I'd love to talk about is, just the American school system and frankly how we parent our children. Some things that we're doing that we, again, think are noble and virtuous that unfortunately are actually leading them down that path of dependence as well.
Well, we've still got a few minutes. If you want to talk about it, feel free.
Yeah, I'd love to. One of my chapters is called A Shameless Parental Dereliction of Duty, and it's a very strong title, but if you think about it, I would say that we have erected 4 pillars of modern parenting. The first pillar is the promotion of poverty, and the cost of a 4-year all-inclusive college degree now at a private university is $181,600. That says, according to the College Board. Now, that exceeds the median home price in 56 of the 100 largest metropolitan areas. I mean, is that how we should raise off our children and send them on their way with 6 figures of debt? I just think that's insane. And then the outsourcing of supervision. I mean, the last time, Rick and Jen, when was the last time you've gone to a restaurant and you saw a family just eating, family of 3, family of 4, and the child started acting out? The reflexive response that most Americans now employ is just to hand that little child a smartphone or an iPad or some technological device that basically sends a message that, look, you're a nuisance, just sit over there. They're virtual pacifiers, basically, and it completely stunts their behavioral development of an attention span. And then the third pillar, I would say, is the rejection of work. Again, I'm not calling for sweatshop labor, but on the flip side, if a little girl wants to, put out a lemonade stand for, to try and raise $50 to take her dad to dinner for Father's Day, should we really be regulating them, like as if they're the local Applebee's and, hey, you got your liquor license? Do you have your food handler's license? I just think that's insane. And finally, you've got the suppression of discipline, which we look in our culture that discipline is a form of capital punishment as opposed to what it truly is, which is a tool of correction. So, again, the book does, I think it does a pretty good job of explaining that these are all noble intentions that we have, but what they're doing is they're only accelerating our pace to where nobody wants to go, which is that end stage of slavery.
And you are exactly right. Now, you touched on a couple of different things that I kind of want to backtrack to. the electronic pacifier. I have a daughter who just had who has a 2-year-old granddaughter, and every time I see her, that she's got my daughter's phone in her hand. I literally have to pry it out of her hand when she comes to my house, because that's all she wants to do is sit and watch the phone. And I'm like, come on, we live out in the country. We have chickens. We have dogs. We have
room to run.
Pigs. We have cows. We have 2.5 acres.
Well said, Jen.
You can go run.
Right.
Exactly. But
it takes the majesty and splendor right out of life. I mean, go outside and look up at the stars. I mean, this is what inspired our great awakening as a culture. Just the majesty and splendor of this world. And now it's just you're in this crouched position, which is, I just think there's symbolism there where it's the same position that we were all in our mother's womb. Like that's the position that we're all in constantly as a society. And you see people walking down the street, walking into poles because they're looking at their iPhone.
Well, I'm going to say, as a mother of a 3-year-old, almost 4-year-old, there are benefits to having these handheld computers and tools. But I also think that a lot of people just in general, and I don't know if it's just because of the technology, if it's because of how, we've just shortened our attention spans in general as a society, and our focuses have just been, I think, thrown way off of what they should be. But I find so much joy, and we usually go on 2, sometimes 3 a day, and watching a 3-year-old walk around just even a suburban neighborhood and the things that, and he loves it. I say, do you want to go for a walk? And I don't know who's more excited, the dog or the kid, because he likes to look at the different plants, and he notices when there's a hole in one of the fences that we walked by that he can look through to the backyard. And I have to be like, maybe we shouldn't spy on people. But, there's just all sorts of little things that their minds go through, and all sorts of things we learn, and the teaching moments of crossing the street and looking for cars and being polite and saying hi to people and walking around. I mean, all sorts of things that I think we just take for granted, and it all kind of ties back into this idea of how we're raising kids. And it's not so easy when you're on a walk with them and they're not on a leash like a dog is, or hopefully they're not, and you don't have a device to just stick in their face, that you have to rely on some discipline just even in those moments. And sometimes it's for their own safety, and not just because you want to control them and do something right this way right now. My parents gave me the book Dare to Discipline by Dr. Dobson, which was printed for the first time in 1975, and there's been several revisions. And some of my friends are like, "You're not going to use that, are you?" Well,
yeah, you're so
yes. Yes, I'm going to. And I'm such a disciplinarian by nature anyways, so I'm not. And they confuse that with being mean. And so we're so about, like, are we mean to people? Are we offending them? Are we hurting their feelings, that we're not preparing good adults, I'm afraid.
Yeah, and I know we're running up against the break, and stop if you need to, Rick. But I'll just get in one point real quick. If progressivism truly is the miracle of American government and truly the road to utopia, then why has escapism never been louder in our culture? Why do we walk down the street with our heads down for fear of making eye contact? Why, when we see an adult male befriending a young child, do we assume he's a pedophile? Why is a young woman walking down a downtown, like downtown Dallas or downtown New York City, downtown Philadelphia? She can't go there by herself, even in broad daylight, for fear of, something violent happening to her. Are these the fruits of a healthy culture? I mean, logically, I'm just trying to implore with people here, use your critical thinking skills. That this is not a healthy culture, and by and large, we have embraced this, secular humanist, progressive worldview, but it's to our own demise because we're focusing on our emotions as opposed to our minds.
No, you are exactly right. Now, we are about to come up on a hard break, so we have to take it. But I do want to give you one chance to give out information as far as where can folks find the book. Is there anywhere they can follow along with you on social media, that type of stuff?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. It's on Amazon, so I'd encourage your listeners to go to Amazon, just type in Entitled to Slavery. I run a website called AbbottSpeaks.com, where I do weekly podcasts, and I'm on social media, so I'm more than happy to engage with anybody, and I think that's what I take most pride in is I'm the kind of an author that's going to write you back if you send me a message. So please pick up a copy of the book. As Rick had mentioned, it's an enjoyable read. It's going to make you think, and it's going to give you a lot of arguments to defend not only your faith, but it's going to help you combat the culture.
All right, well, it has been our pleasure sitting in with Michael Abbott, Jr., the author of Entitled to Slavery. Sir, you are welcome back anytime, and I have forwarded information over to the station manager, so we'll work on trying to get you into the rotation with any other hosts that would be interested. And it again has been our pleasure. This is Jen and Rick. We are live right now on KLRNradio.com. We're going to be back here in just about 4 minutes after we get a break out of the way. Stay tuned.
I'm not ready to end the fight. I'm not ready to back down. 'Cause I've been through hell and I don't have time to go round and round and round. It's too late to turn back now. You know I wouldn't if I could. 'Cause I'm proud as hell. I can't bring myself to do what it is you think I
should. You're listening to the Spark Radio Network, internet radio like you've never heard before. Innovation, creativity, and imagination are all said to begin with a spark. So fasten your seatbelt and take the ride of your life and listen for the spark.
You are listening to KLRN Radio, where liberty and reason still reign.
Hey, this is John Preston, Marine combat veteran and Pacific Records recording artist. Just reaching out to have you check out our new album, Battle Cry, Songs of America's Heroes, an album featuring phenomenal other combat veteran artists like Scott Brown of the Scooter Brown Band, Ryan Weaver, Rowdy Johnson, just an incredible mix of people. This is all veterans telling our stories and our lives, and we're giving 100% of our proceeds to the Valkyrie Initiative to help veterans and first responders integrate back into society. I myself have battled with post-traumatic stress for many years and lost my own brother, a Marine Corps veteran, to suicide. I ask that you step with us and make this happen. We are in pre-order right now and release on March 17th. Go to iTunes, go to Amazon, buy. We plan on making the charts and making it at a very high level, and your support right now makes a difference. This is the release of my new song, Superman Falls, which is actually about the loss of my own brother, which happened last year, and I would love for everyone to check it out, to listen, and hopefully it'll make a difference in many lives.
If you're 85 or younger, would you like peace of mind and comfort for your family? We're Final Expense Direct with an urgent message for you. The average funeral today costs over $8,000, but the most you'll get from government benefits is $255. How will your family pay the difference? We can help. Our senior plans start as low as just $1 a day and pay up to $30,000 for a funeral and other final expenses. Peace of mind is easy. There's no medical exam. You'll have lifetime coverage, and your plan can't be canceled as long as you pay your premiums. Call now for free information about our senior plans. Answer a few simple questions and receive approval right on the phone. Plus, call right now and we'll give you a discount prescription card for free. Call 800-553-8687. That's 800-553-8687. Again, 800-553-8687. 687.
This is Slickery Trigger for Rebel Road Tactical. With proper care and feeding, your pistol will be ready when you need it, there to save your life. Shouldn't your gear be that good? Whether you need a holster for comfortable everyday carry or a tough-as-nails holster for your next training course, Rebel Road Tactical has what you need. Check us out on the web at rebelroadtactical.com.
I'm not ready to end the fight. I'm not ready to back down. 'Cause I've been through hell and I don't have time to go round and round and round. It's too late to turn back now. You know I wouldn't if I could. 'Cause I'm proud as hell, I can't bring myself to do what it is you think I should.
All right, this is Jed and Rick. We are still live right now on KLRNradio.com. If you missed the first half of the show, I do encourage you to go back and listen to it later. We have guest Michael Abbott Jr. If you want to follow along with him on Twitter, he's actually at Abbott Speaks. He didn't give it out on the air because he spends more time on Facebook, but, still a good way to connect with him, keep up with the stuff that he's doing. If you haven't read the book yet, I do encourage you to do so. It has been a really good read. I'm actually reading through it for the second time to try to catch up because it's just one of those things where I'm typically, I don't know if I've ever told anybody this, but I have like a yearly ritual. I read The Stand every year. I'm one of those guys that will watch the same movies and reread the same books like a bazillion times. And as much as I don't like Stephen King's politics, I do love his writing.
That's funny. I do that with, this is, super nerd of me. I do that with a couple books. I do it with the Iliad. I reread Pride and Prejudice quite often, and I read the Federalist Papers quite often. So I'm actually going through a reading of the Federalist Papers right now, which oftentimes somewhere between 10 p.m. and midnight Central, you will see me sometimes tweeting pieces of them as I'm not trying to blow through them and read pages and pages. I go through paragraph by paragraph and think about the different things and kind of consider them, and I take it slow. And anyway, so I've been tweeting those out. So if anybody wants to check it out every now and then, I'm hashtagging Fed Papers, whatever the number is of it. I think I'm on Federalist Paper 14 or 15 right now. But yeah, I get that. I reread.
Yeah, well, I can honestly say I haven't. Did you really say what was the first one you mentioned?
The Iliad. I know. No one gets it.
No, I get it. I've read it. It's not something that I would ever consider rereading.
No, most people are if you're going to reread something of that nature, it would be the Odyssey or the Aeneid or all sorts of different, more story flowing, mythological, tellings, or shorter things. It's not as eventful, and it certainly doesn't have the kind of flow that something like the Odyssey does. But for whatever reason, when I first had to read it, I was in 9th grade, and I have read it, at least 8 or 9 times since, which most people are lucky to get through it once in their life. So
see, maybe that was,
I'm a weirdo.
Maybe that was what did it in for me, because it was actually, I think it was around 9th or 10th grade for me too, and it was an English assignment. And while I did enjoy the Odyssey, and I've actually read it more than once, the Iliad I don't know, it's a tough read, man. I'm not gonna lie.
It is. It's much tougher, but once I started really. So the second time that I read it was right at the beginning of college, and that was I was taking a mythology class, and we were required to read excerpts, and big chunks though, huge chunks of it. And I was doing that, and I was going, wait a second though, but we missed that part, and I was remembering things that we missed, and so I started reading the whole thing through instead of just those chunks that we needed for whatever paper or testing. And as a young adult, as opposed to a young teenager, there were things that I grasped the language better. I was able to make sense of it more. It wasn't as hard to decipher, and there were just parts of it that became so incredibly interesting to me, particularly so much of the battle strategy and such. So I don't know, it just kind of was one of those things that I always loved, and everybody goes, what? Every time I say it.
Well, no, it just confirms what a lot of us have already known. You're a nerd, but it's okay.
Yes.
We still love you.
I know. I'm all right with it.
See, this is when I needed Ogre from Revenge of the Nerds yelling nerd. See, there's still things that I have to get on my soundboard, and I don't have them yet. It makes me sad. All right, so we've spent most of the show talking about books. Lots of stuff going on in the news. Anything particular you want to touch on about the last 20 minutes?
Well, there is one thing that's kind of happening, and this was featured on Tucker Carlson's show last night, actually. But Lila Rose who works with Life News, and Live Action, Life News. They've, obviously super big pro-life group, and they have been live action has been censored. So they have been told that they cannot advertise on Twitter, so they can't promote their tweets. They can't have sponsored, content on Twitter until they delete certain tweets and they refuse to use certain images. Well, most of what it has to do with is fact-checking Planned Parenthood and blocking ultrasound pictures, or just it's mostly ultrasound pictures or even drawings of a child in the womb, like sucking on its thumb, a lifelike, drawing of one. They have been told that they have to delete those tweets that here, let me just read a couple of hers. It's outright Orwellian that Twitter says we must delete tweets that effectively criticize PPAC or show ultrasounds to advertise. Live Action has the biggest social media platform for the pro-life movement, and social media is an essential part of our educational push. So they're basically suppressing this kind of speech. And I want to reiterate, and in some cases they're outright blocking the images, even without sponsoring, even without trying to advertise, they're outright blocking these images. And they're showing up for people as sensitive or, possibly offensive. And so people aren't seeing them, or they have to click an extra link in order to be able to see them. Of pictures of babies, for goodness sakes. We're not talking about aborted babies. We're talking about actual babies, cute little ultrasound pictures of them wiggling their fingers in the womb. Like, what is so offensive about this? So anyways, I'd like to reiterate that obviously Twitter can, and I tweeted this today, they can censor whatever they want, and they can require you to do whatever they want in order for you to get the advertising that you're asking for or whatever. But it doesn't mean that people can't complain, and it doesn't mean that they can't expose them for it and try to influence a change.
I had seen a little bit about this, but like I said, I was actually reading through the book most of the day at work, so I honestly didn't have much time to play on social media. So I'd seen bits and pieces of it. I don't know. It seems like it's another one of those instances where, they used to at least try to hide the fact that they had a slant, kind of like Facebook used to try to hide the fact that they have a slant. I guess they just really don't care anymore.
Well, that's what it kind of. I mean, this just seems outrageous. Like, first of all, it's not so much that you are not allowing a certain group to promote. It's that you're telling them they have to delete tweets that are criticizing another organization. So you're basically saying, yes, this organization just gets to say whatever they want and everyone should take it at face value. This other organization is challenging them and critiquing them and trying to fact check them. And they are the ones that need to be punished, and they are the ones that need to basically shut up. And that we are going to effectively suppress those things because we don't like that it counters this organization that we do like, which, by the way, has been fact-checked by so many neutral sources, and there are so many marks against Planned Parenthood that it's just utterly ridiculous to take anything they say at face value. But it just seems really kind of crazy. But yeah, they've had tweets actually flagged as inflammatory or provocative, and there's a couple of examples. The Planned Parenthood tweeted something that said, extremists know defunding Planned Parenthood means 600,000 women lose health care. They're okay with that. And they're saying, well, this was okay, even calling people extremists for wanting to defund. That wasn't, inflammatory. But when Lila Rose tweeted, let's set the record straight. PPAC is about abortion, not women's health care. We can fund more worthy clinics instead. Hashtag defund PP. And it says, it went to a picture that says Planned Parenthood does 0 mammograms and less than 2% of U.S. breast exams. That tweet was flagged. That tweet was flagged as inflammatory or provocative and was said to need to be deleted. A tweet that says defunding Planned Parenthood is a misnomer. Here's who gets hurt when politicians attack access to care. And then there was a graphic. That's by Planned Parenthood. That was okay. But Live Action said, women don't need Planned Parenthood. There's over 13,000 comprehensive health clinics, and it's a map. And that was flagged. So this is really becoming I don't know. I mean, like I said, Twitter can do whatever it wants, but I think it's definitely a problem that needs to be highlighted and people need to continue to talk about because it's absolutely absurd.
Well, yeah, because, I mean, let's face it, they are a private company. They have the right to regulate anything they choose, but we also have the First Amendment right to criticize them for overregulating. So that's the part that I don't think anybody understands, because I see this all the time when they start, Twitter will ban somebody or they'll do this, and they'll start screaming about free speech and this, that, and the other, and everybody's like, well, it's a private business. They can do what they want. Well, yeah, but that doesn't mean that I don't have a First Amendment right to call them buttheads for doing something that I think is stupid. And especially something like this. This is crazy. Because this is, I mean, they're literally just making people remove tweets just for, trying to show people that, hey, this isn't exactly how you're saying it is, and here's the proof. Oh, that's offensive. That must be taken down.
Right. And I think it especially becomes problematic when we watch day after day after day of people saying horrific things online, and especially on Twitter. And the friends that we've had that have even been doxxed or have had in other ways had, private photos and personal numbers and things posted, and that those were not deemed offensive or inflammatory enough in some cases. Now, it's gotten better. I feel like Twitter is regulating that kind of thing a lot better, but there's all this kind of stuff that we see and all of this vitriol and hatred and the white people need to die and, we should exterminate white males and all, men are all rapists. These are things that we see all the time, and those aren't considered inflammatory. And we see them by blue check marks. We see them by verified users, and they don't get their account shut down. They aren't told they have to delete those tweets. But then you tweet a picture of a baby in the womb and you say, it's a baby, not a choice, and that's inflammatory, and that is worthy of wanting to shut down an account or, temporarily suspend it until that is deleted because it's from a pro-life organization. That is absolutely reprehensible.
It's interesting that you bring up the verified, as I call them, because I don't know any other way to call them. And I know a few people that I actually know personally that are verified, and they seem like they're okay folks. But Twitter has literally created a virtual aristocracy because they have they have account settings that none of us have. They have the ability to go in and show it or make their settings to where they can only see tweets from other verified accounts. You basically have created a police state when it comes to them, because if you say one cross thing to them with any type of a curse word, you're liable to get put in Twitmo. And they
sometimes not even a curse word. Sometimes just something that can be, construed as an insult. It doesn't even necessarily have to have a cuss word in it. That's crazy.
I mean, it just why is it? And oddly enough, this kind of goes back to the book that we've been talking about most of the show. But why is it that we as a society keep trying to find ways to basically put ourselves back into some form of subjugation? We literally want people to take care of us. I don't understand that. We want people to, because that wasn't what this country was founded upon. This country was founded upon the ideal that, again, we are all created equally, that we all have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. All of those things have been perverted. They don't want equality anymore. They want equal outcome. They don't want the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. They want equal opportunity to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness guaranteed by the government.
Right, and they only want the kind of lives that they deem worthy or that they care about.
And I mean, and it's playing out everywhere, because now we have a social media platform that a lot of people use to promote their work. Honestly, I think one of the reasons why some of the stuff that we've done that has taken off as well as it has, but was because Twitter for a long time wasn't very heavily regulated. I have to admit, I hated Twitter when I started. I have made so many friends over here that I am just saddened to see what it's turned into, because it really was a place where basically people could get together and they could promote ideals and they could work together. And now it's just, well, first of all, if you don't have a blue check mark, basically you're a second-class citizen. Second of all, if you say something that we disagree with, we're going to make you remove it. Which, I'm sorry, should be the last thing that any social media platform should be doing.
Well, I mean, I just don't understand when you're talking about wanting to start or calling it social media. That implies that you're inviting, all kinds of people, ideas, and groups. And when you start to chip away at that and you start to tailor it to only being certain groups, and like you're saying, having some sort of hierarchy of importance and placing that on people, and having different rules for each group of people or for different groups of people, then it really takes away from any kind of purity of what a social media platform is supposed to accomplish. But, that's the world we live in, and that sucks. I think that we have every right to fight it. And, Twitter can also kick us off if they want to. But it's not in their best interest to do so. And I think that if people are loud enough and keep at it long enough, something will give. And we've already seen that a few times with some things that they have given in, at least to the extent of backing off. So who knows? We'll see what happens. But I think this is one issue that definitely deserves being stood up for.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that Twitter needs to remember is they were the ones that decided to make themselves a publicly traded entity, which, you can be a private company and regulate yourself all you want, but eventually you're going to have to deal with folks that may or may not like what it is that you're doing, which can ultimately reflect on your stockholders. So, I mean, I think they're going to figure it out over time that there are more of us than there are of them, and I don't even necessarily mean that in a negative context, but let's be real. They're killing each other left and right, and they're aborting their children faster than they can make them. So eventually there are going to be more of us than there are of them, whether they want there to be or not.
Well, and one of our friends put something pretty clever out there where they said, this is interesting that they want to do this because, you'd think that they would not want to censor future Twitter users who quite possibly would also be progressives. So why are they trying to censor this message that will only produce more people to have on their side? I thought that was kind of funny. But I also think that with all of this, it really does show how this is in no way offensive. This is not, censoring Richard Spencer and some sort of white nationalist, agenda and narrative. This is not the same as, even deciding to limit some sort of, let's just say an extremist, of a religious extremist group that is constantly just harassing people and calling them, the bane of humanity and that they're all going to hell and burning in a fiery ball. This is seriously just talking about images and something that is a positive thing, which is pro-life. And I think that they're going to get sideways on this because I don't think even people that are not necessarily pro-life and are maybe somewhat pro-choice or kind of in the middle of the road there and aren't super harsh about it, are not going to think that this is normal or that this makes any sense at all. I've already talked to a few on my own TL today that they're like, wait, what? This is stupid. Why would they do that? I'm pro-choice, but this is not offensive. This is dumb. So I think they're going to find themselves sideways on this. And this is the first they've spoken out about it. And I think they waited to get quite a few tweets rejected and be told to delete quite a few things and then be told they couldn't advertise. I think they sat on it and kind of built the case to be able to release it to the public and say, hey, look, this is what's happening. And this is absolutely a Twitter decision that is, not good.
And, whether we like it or not, again, it is ultimately their decision. But the joy of being able to make decisions like that is you're the one that has to deal with whatever those consequences may be. And I think they're about to find out what those consequences are. I do want to touch on one other thing real quick on the way out the door, because there's been lots of noise going on again for the last few days over the Senate healthcare bill. And one of the things that I keep seeing thrown around is how there are going to be 22 million people thrown off of healthcare. First of all, that's wrong. that number doesn't take into account the number of people from ages 18 to 26 that don't necessarily feel like they even need health care, and they are legally adults and they should be able to decide whether or not they feel like they need health care. Do I agree with their assessment that they shouldn't have at least some sort of catastrophic plan in case something happens? No, but it's ultimately their decision because they're adults. So come back to me when you find out what the actual impact is going to be, because right now you guys are touting all of these people that you got insurance that they can't afford to use in the first place. And it's not even anything that you got them. It's something that you made them purchase. So that
you made them get on it. That these people, that was around the number of people that didn't have it in the first place last time around when they started Obamacare. And a big chunk of that number was people that were, not that were not wanting to have to buy some sort of plan. So this is just. It's just more stupidity. They're just talking out both ends here.
One other interesting point about this 22 million number that they're throwing around, there were a total of 34 million people that were removed from private insurance under Obamacare because their insurance companies either folded or stopped offering coverages that they could afford. So let's start talking about the real numbers and the real impacts here. I'm not a fan of the replace plan for Obamacare. I'm not. But I honestly don't know how to fix this at this point without doing it in pieces, and I think that's ultimately what I hope the Republicans are trying to do. I'm personally a let it implode, let it burn, pick up the pieces and pick it up and do it all over again kind of guy, but apparently they're not going to go for that. But at least they're trying to do something, because we know that as it stands right now, if Obamacare does not get some sort of an overhaul or get repealed or get something else put in its place, it's going to explode. And when it explodes, it's going to take everybody with it, because now everybody's dependent on it. And the funny thing is, I actually now hear liberals in Oklahoma that are honestly for once saying, oh my God, the Republicans were right after all, because we told them when they started trying to expand all these Medicare exchanges that when the conservatives here said, no, we don't want any part of that money. And we told them that eventually what's going to happen is somebody else is going to get the job. They're going to decide they're going to cut the funding, which they're not cutting it, by the way. They're decreasing its growth. But of course, the Democrats want to yell at like that's a cut when it's not really the same thing. But because of that, now all the Democrats around here are going, well, dang, if we'd have taken that extra Medicaid money, now that it's gone, I'm not sure what we would be doing, or that extra Medicare money, because we already have budget issues. Imagine the holes we'd be having to fill in now when that money dried up and we're all sitting back going, who was it that told you this was a terrible idea again? You bastards.
Exactly.
All right, well, believe it or not, my dear, we are officially out of time. We are about 3 minutes to the top of the hour. Why don't you remind folks where it is that they can hang out with you when you're not on the radio hanging out with me? Oh, and promote tomorrow. Promote tomorrow.
Oh, yes. Okay, well, I am at J Homestead on Twitter, JR Homestead on Facebook, and also check out at Misfits Politics on Twitter and misfitspolitics.com. We actually, some of us will be on with our own G from G Nation tomorrow night at, what is it, 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Central?
Yep, yes, ma'am.
Is that correct?
That is correct.
Yes. So, I'm so bad at making sure I have the Eastern, Centrals, Pacifics, all of that correct. I have it fine on paper, but when I start thinking about talking about it, I'm like, I don't know which one it is.
You know how many years I did this before I even got close to right most of the time?
And I mean, I've lived in all the time zones, so I don't know why I can't keep this straight. But it's only on off the cuff that I go, I second guess myself. But anyways, so some of the crew is going to be on with G tomorrow night, which will be really fun. We're super excited about it, and we'll get to talk quite a bit about what it is we're what our goals are and what our message is and why we're doing what the heck ever it is we're doing. And that'll be followed right afterwards with our Misfit Gift Challenge that happens every Wednesday night. So, please tune in right here on KLRNradio.com.
All right, and I, of course, am Rick Robinson. You can follow along with me on Twitter at AOTR_host. You can also keep up with me on Facebook, should you so choose by searching Rick Robinson. Look for the picture of the little cartoon-looking guy on the cover of Time magazine. I did that on purpose, not because I have a big ego, but because there's lots of Rick Robinson, and at least it's easy to see which one's me. Also, we have a very big announcement. I'd planned on having a promo to run for her tonight, but unfortunately we could not get that done. Miss Sam Janney, a.k.a. Politibunny, is returning to the airwaves tomorrow night officially for the first time in, wow, it's been, I think, over a year at this point. She's come home to KLRNradio.com. She is now the lead-off broadcast on Wednesday nights, so it'll be FUBAR, I believe, what is she calling it? FUBAR?
One Nation Under
One Nation
Fu.
Under Fu. She actually combined the two titles, and I always try to get them backwards. But anyway, so it's FUBAR, One Nation Under Fu. That will be airing for the first time, debut episode tomorrow night at 7 Eastern, 6 Central. So right before G and the folks from Misfit Politics are on. And actually, I keep meaning to talk to you about that. At some point, I'd actually like to set up a time to do, even if it's a pre-record, an interview for you guys that we can push out to everywhere else that Off the Rails goes.
Sure. I'd love to.
And it's just, G beat me to the punch, which he usually does because I'm like juggling like 8 million things. He's like, hey, I'm going to do this. And I'm like, man, I keep meaning to talk to her about that. And I just keep forgetting to do it because I'm like doing a million other things. But anyway.
No, all good.
All right, so on that note, folks, we are officially out. I'll be back here in just about 5 minutes or so, kicking off a live episode of America Off the Rails. Because of the Gremlins, we got a late start. I'm still doing one tonight anyway because I'm kind of jazzed after that interview. So we're going to do an hour of me talking about the news and events of the day, and I'll be back with you here in about 5 minutes or so. Until we see you here on Jen and Rick, we'll be back on Thursday night. Take care, God bless, and we'll see you when we see you.
I'm not ready to end the fight. I'm not ready to back down, 'cause I've been through hell and I don't have time to go round and round and round. It's too late to turn back now.